Goldar, Rito, I order you to leave at once.
We were just on our way out.
Yeah, and so's the Zeo Crystal. Ciao.
In February 1996, Power Rangers blew up its own building. Not a cliffhanger, not a fake out. Goldar and Rito walk into the command center through passageways underneath it. They take the Zeo Crystal, they set an implosion device, and the place comes down. Zordon's gone, Alpha's gone, and the coins were already shattered by then. So the 5 kids standing outside had no powers, no Zords, and no mentor. That's how Mighty Morphin ended. It didn't get canceled, it got demolished, on purpose, so that something else could stand where it stood. The something else was Zeo, and today we're taking it out of the timeline entirely. Canon first, stated flat, because the speed of this is the thing people forget. Master Vile turns up in Season 3 and uses the Orb of Doom to reverse time on Earth, and the Rangers become children. They keep their memories because they still got the ninja power coins, but they can't morph. So Zordon calls in the alien Rangers of Aquitar to hold the line, and that arc is its own official miniseries, 10 episodes, aired across February 1996. Billy builds a machine called the Regenerator to grow everybody back up. It runs on the ninja power coins. It works on Billy once, and then Goldar and Rito steal it before it can finish the job. And then Rita and Zed shatter the coins. That's the moment. Not a battle, not a sacrifice, not a last stand. The most recognizable object in 90s children's television gets broken off-screen by 2 villains who've been losing every week for 3 years. After that, the only route back is the Zeo Crystal, scattered as 5 sub-crystals through Earth's history, and the kids have to go and find it. They do. They win. And then the command center comes down anyway, in a 2-parter called Hog Day Afternoon, that aired in the middle of February 1996. So what replaced it? The Zeo Crystal is one artifact made of 5 sub-crystals, and canon is explicit that they're the successors to the power coins. The combined crystal can reach the Morphin grid directly. It produces enormous amounts of energy, and the show says out loud that it gets stronger as time passes. Tommy splits it with Saba. Zordon scatters the pieces through holes in time and space. The Rangers go and collect them. The sub-crystals get set into new devices called Zeonizers, and that's the morph. New suits, new Zords. A new villain faction called the Machine Empire. King Mondo, Queen Machina, Prince Sprocket, Clank, and Orbis, and a stack of cogs. Rita and Zed get shoved off the moon by them and spend the season living in a recreational vehicle. 50 episodes, 1996, Fox Kids. And a Gold Ranger mystery that ran 7 episodes and ended with Jason back on the show. So that's the swap on paper. Everything you recognized, gone in about a fortnight of broadcast. Everything you didn't, in place by the spring. Most people remember it as a slow drift. It wasn't. It was a demolition and a rebuild, and the gap between the two was almost nothing. One rule here, and it holds for the whole video. Anything I can prove, I'll prove. Anything I'm imagining, you'll hear me announce it before I say it. This is one of a month of daily uploads, and it's the one I put off longest, because it's the era I actually care about.
Served your planet well, but the Power Rangers as you have known them are gone forever. In their place has emerged.
Right, second register. Why did anybody do this? Because Power Rangers doesn't get to choose. It's built on Japanese footage. Every season adapts a Super Sentai series, and Super Sentai resets every year without asking anybody's permission. New suits, new team, new mecha, new toy line, 12 months, done. In the American show, it spent 3 years refusing to play along. Season 2 adapted Die Ranger, but kept the original Zeo Ranger suits, because the suits were too popular to drop, which meant Saban had to pay Toei to shoot brand new footage of the old costumes fighting the new monsters. Season 3 adapted Kaku Ranger and did it again, keeping the old suits and taking mostly the machines. And it showed. Established weapons quietly stopped turning up on screen, because there simply wasn't footage of them anymore. That's what holding a cast in place against an annual reset actually looks like. Expensive, awkward, visible. Zeo is the moment that stops, and here's the fact I'd put on the poster. Zeo is the first Power Rangers season to follow the Super Sentai practice of changing the Ranger suits every year. Everything you think of as normal about this franchise, the new team, the new colors, the new toys, every single year, starts here. So, The coins didn't get shattered because a writer fancied a dark episode. They got shattered because the show needed a reason to put 5 people in different clothes. And it needed that reason badly enough to knock down its own set. Labeled reading, mine. Zeo isn't a season, it's a hinge. And for what it's worth, the audience has quietly agreed with that for years without saying it out loud. 50 episodes, 1 year, and the season currently sits at an 86% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. That's the audience number, not the critics' number. And I'm saying so because those two things get mixed up constantly. People who lived through the changeover hated it at the time. People who've watched it since keep marking it up. And there's a layer underneath that, which almost nobody in the English-speaking fandom talks about. Zeo adapts Chauriki Sentai Oranger. 48 episodes, March 1995 to February 1996, and the villains there are the Machine Empire Baranoia. Under an emperor called Bacchus Hund, Oranger was Super Sentai's 20th anniversary series, and it was deliberately written darker and more military than the shows either side of it. Then 2 things happened in Japan that year. The Great Hanshin Earthquake, on the 17th of January, 1995. 6,434 people died. And the Tokyo subway sarin attack, on the 20th of March, 1995, carried out by a doomsday cult. I'm not going to dwell on either of those, and I'm not going to dress them up as trivia. They're not trivia. What's documented is the consequence for the program. The serious tone lasted roughly 9 episodes, before the show was pushed towards lighter plots with less death. The in-fiction setting year got quietly shifted. Ratings fell. Toei is reported to have considered ending Super Sentai altogether, with toy sales cited as the thing that prevented it. Admit a gap, out loud. There's no published signed document ordering that tone change. That's the settled community account rather than a leaked memo. And I'm telling you which it is. Right. Register resumed. Labeled reading, ours. A decent chunk of what people find odd about Zeo was inherited. The tonal wobble, the goofy robot emperor, the sense of a season that can't decide what it is. Some of that was already baked into the footage before a single American line got written. Hard line, right here. Nothing past this point happened. From here on, I'm guessing, and I'm going to keep saying so, because I don't want a 30-second clip of this doing the rounds with somebody thinking I claimed it was real. Here's the change. The coins still shatter, because that's how you write out a Zord line. But the Zeo Crystal is never made the successor. Zordon rebuilds, the grid holds, and the Rangers morph back into the suits they've always had. Ninjor's coins get reforged, or the dinosaur set gets restored. And the show carries on as Mighty Morphin into a 4th season and beyond. No Zeonizers, no Machine Empire, no annual reset. Mighty Morphin just keeps going. Guessing now and arguing it from the machine rather than from thin air. Here's the thing people miss when they wish for this. Oranger doesn't stop existing. Toei made 48 episodes of it and delivered them whether Saban wanted a fresh start or not. The conveyor belt keeps running. So in our timeline, Season 4 of Mighty Morphin still has to be built out of Oranger footage, with the old suits kept on. Which is exactly the Die Ranger problem and the Kaku Ranger problem for a 3rd consecutive year on a show whose original costumes are by then 4 years old. My guess, and it's a guess with receipts underneath it, the seams get worse. You either pay Toei for another round of bespoke footage of aging suits, which is the expensive option, or you shoot around it, which is the cheap and visible option. And you do that again the next year and the year after, because there's another Sentai series landing every February forever. There's a second cost, and it's the one that actually decides this. Toys. A season that keeps the same 5 suits has nothing new to sell in the top-line category. The whole reason Super Sentai changes everything annually is that a new team is a new shelf. Zeo gave the shops 5 new colors, 5 new Zords, and a Gold Ranger, labeled Forecast. The version of this show that never changes its suits doesn't get cancelled for being bad. It gets cancelled for being finished with, which is a much quieter and much more final way to go. Still guessing. Take out the Zeo Crystal, and you take out a structure, not just a prop. The Crystal Quest gave the show something it had never really had, a goal that lasted longer than an episode. 5 pieces, scattered through time, and a reason for the cast to be somewhere other than Angel Grove. That's the closest Mighty Morphin ever got to a season-long spine. Without it, my honest read is that the show reverts to what it was best at and worst at simultaneously. Monster of the Week, Zord Fight, reset by the credits, which is a format that worked spectacularly for 3 years and was already visibly tiring in the third. And there's a knock-on I keep chewing on. No crystal means no Zeonizers, which means the show never establishes the idea that the power source itself can be upgraded. Every later season leans on that idea. New powers, new grid connection, new keys. Zeo is where the franchise learns that the source of the powers is a renewable story engine rather than a fixed object. Guess, labeled, delete Zeo, and you don't just lose a season, you lose the lesson.
I, Tray of Courage, give forth the spirit and fortitude the golden power possesses. And I, Tray of...
Still guessing, and this is the one that cost the most. Canon first for a second, because the detail matters. Zeo runs a mystery arc about the Gold Ranger that starts in episode 27, The Power of Gold, and pays off in episode 34, A Golden Homecoming. 7 episodes. That's the first Gold Ranger anywhere in this franchise. Behind the mask is Tray of Triforia, who is one being with 3 personalities, courage, wisdom, and heart, and who gets split into 3 separate bodies after a run-in with a bounty hunter, and can't use his own powers while he's in pieces. So he lends them out. Billy tries them first, and his body rejects them, because he'd absorbed negative energy in the command center blast. And then the powers go to Jason. That's the return, the original Red Ranger, back on the show, in gold, 2 years after he left. Now delete Zeo. There's no Gold Ranger arc, because there's no Zeo Crystal, no Tray, and no gold suit in the footage. So my forecast, labeled as a forecast, that reunion doesn't happen, or it happens in some much smaller way that nobody remembers. And I want to be careful about why he'd left in the first place, because that story belongs to the people who lived it. The short version, and it's on the record from multiple cast accounts, the original cast were non-union, they had no residuals, they asked to be paid properly, and 3 of them were let go. That's the documented shape of it. I'm not naming anybody, and I'm not guessing at anyone's motives. What I'll say is this. Zeo is the season that brought one of them back, and in a timeline without Zeo, the door that reopens stays shut. There's a sting in the tail of the real version too, and it's worth knowing before you decide which timeline you want. In the season finale, episode 50, Good as Gold, the gold towers are draining away and taking Jason's life force with them, because they were never meant for a human body in the first place. He hands them back to a reunited Tray. So the return we all remember ends with the original Red Ranger being quietly poisoned by the job and giving it up. Labeled opinion, that's a better story than the reunion by itself would have been, and it only exists because Zeo existed.
No more Power Rangers!
Still guessing, and this one's more fun than it sounds. The Machine Empire arrive in Zeo, and they take the moon off Rita and Zed. Not metaphorically. A pair of them get evicted and spend the season living in a recreational vehicle, plotting from a caravan, occasionally turning up to be sarcastic about the new management. It's the funniest sustained bit in the entire franchise, and I will not be arguing about that. It also does something structurally important. It's the first time Power Rangers replaces its villains rather than escalating them. For 3 years, the answer to what's next had been a bigger, louder version of the last one. Zeo says no, here's a completely different kind of enemy, and the old ones are now a running joke. Delete Zeo, and Rita and Zed stay in charge, forever. Which is lovely for about 10 minutes, and then you realize the show has no gear left. And it reaches a lot further than one season. In the real timeline, remnants of the Machine Empire turn up years later, on the moon, trying to reactivate Serpentera. And that's the story that finally finishes them off for good. Take the Empire out of 1996, and that whole later payoff has nothing to pay off. Forecast, labeled, without Zeo, the villain bench never gets deeper, and a show that can't change its villains, can't change anything else either. Still guessing.
Guys, I've made a really important decision. I'll miss you all, but I'm going to stay here on Aquatar with Sestria.
In the real timeline, Billy starts Zeo by stepping back from active duty into a technical role. Then he's hit with rapid aging, a side effect of his own machine, and the cure is bathing in the eternal falls on Aquatar. In a 2-parter called Rangers of Two Worlds, the team gets a message from him. He's back to his own age, he's fallen for Sestria, and he's staying. The real-world reason he left the show is the hardest story in this fandom, and it belongs in its own video, with room to breathe, not shoved sideways into a what-if. There's a full one on the channel. Go and watch that one properly. But structurally, here's the guess. Without Zeo, that exit still has to happen. and it has to happen inside a Mighty Morphin season that's already keeping 5 suits alive on borrowed footage. The Aquitar send-off worked partly because Zeo had spare room. It had already rebuilt everything, so it could afford a quiet episode about one man leaving. Labeled forecast. In our timeline, Billy's goodbye is smaller and more rushed, and that's genuinely sad, because the version we got is one of the few departures this show ever gave a proper ending.
Shifting the turbo! Mounted blaster!
Still guessing, and now the conveyor belt catches us. Car Ranger was made. It aired in Japan. The footage was going to arrive in America, regardless of what the American show was doing in 1996. Because that's how the deal works, and it's worth knowing what that footage actually was, because it makes the problem sharper. Car Ranger was written as a self-parody of its own genre. The reference sources all reach for that same phrase. So the material arriving on the loading bay isn't just tonally different from Mighty Morphin. It's actively taking the mickey out of the kind of show Mighty Morphin was. So, in our timeline, you've got Mighty Morphin, 4 or 5 years old, same suits, tired format, and a delivery of comedy car footage that the writers have to somehow treat with a straight face. 2 options, and I can't call which. Either the show finally changes anyway, a year later, in a worse position and with less goodwill, or it refuses again, and Saban has to buy yet more bespoke footage to bolt cars onto dinosaurs. Admitted gap, and I'm not fudging it. I don't know. There is no interview, no production note, no memo anywhere that tells you what Saban would have done with a 4th consecutive year of mismatched footage, and anybody who says they know is inventing it. What I've got is a pattern, 3 years long, of choosing the expensive option, and a business that eventually stopped choosing it.
It's Morphin time!
Mastodon! Pterodactyl!
Triceratops!
Saber-tooth tiger!
Tyrannosaurus!
Now let me argue against myself, because a what-if that only points one way is a sales pitch. There are real gains here, big ones. You keep the suits, and I mean that seriously, not sentimentally. The Mighty Morphin costumes are the most recognizable thing this franchise has ever produced, and Zeo swapped them out at the exact moment they were the most famous outfits on the planet. In a world where they never change, the merchandise, the identity, and the brand all stay pointed at one image instead of a new one every year. You keep the cast together longer. The single biggest complaint about the Zordon era is that people kept vanishing. A show that never resets has no structural excuse to rotate anybody out. And you keep the command center, which sounds small until you notice that the show spent 3 years making one set feel like home, then demolished it, and never quite got that feeling back. I want to sit on that one for a second, because I think it's underrated. Every kids show has a base. Very few of them make the base matter. That set was a fixed point in a program where absolutely everything else reset every Friday, and the audience knew every inch of it before anybody thought to make a video about it. When Rito and Goldar walked through those forgotten passageways, they weren't blowing up a prop. They were blowing up the only room the show ever let you feel safe in. In our timeline, that room survives. Zordon stays in it. And whatever else you think about the trade, that's a real thing you'd be getting back. Labeled opinion? The Mighty Morphin that never ends is a warmer show than the one we got. It's also a shorter one. Those 2 things are connected, and I don't think you get to have both.
Tommy, what are we gonna do?
But this could be the end of the Power Rangers.
So the tally and every line on it is a guess argued from the footage pipeline and the production record. You gain. The suits, the command center, the original team held together longer, and no 30-year argument about which era counts as the real Power Rangers. You lose. The annual reset, which is the single mechanic that let this franchise reach 30 seasons instead of 8. The first Gold Ranger, Tray of Triforia, the Machine Empire, Rita and Zed in a caravan, which is still the funniest sustained bit in the whole run, the Red Ranger's return, and the lesson that a power source can be replaced, which every later season is built on. Labeled verdict mine, and I changed my mind while writing this. I went in wanting Zeo gone. I came out convinced it's the most important season Power Rangers ever made, and that almost nobody rates it that way, including me until about a fortnight ago. Here's what I keep turning over. The people who ended Mighty Morphin weren't trying to break your heart. They were looking at a delivery schedule and a toy catalog. The coins got shattered because there was new footage coming, and the old suits couldn't carry it. And what came out the other end was a franchise that could survive losing anybody. Any cast, any suit, any Zord, any mentor. Because Zeo proved the show could throw all of it away and still be Power Rangers the following week. That's a brutal thing to build into a children's program. It's also the only reason there was still a Power Rangers to argue about in 2023. And I think that's why the changeover still stings 30 years on. It wasn't a story choice you were invited to feel something about. Nobody got a farewell scene. The coins didn't go out in a blaze. They just stopped being the thing. Because a delivery arrived and a shelf needed filling. Kids television does that constantly and almost never admits it. The bit I've come round to is that admitting it doesn't make it worse. It makes the show honest about what it always was, which is a toy advert that occasionally, by accident, made something you'd still be thinking about in your 40s. Comments, 2 things, and be specific. 1. If Mighty Morphin never ends, how many more years does it get before somebody switches it off? Give me a number and a reason. 2. Straight swap, and think about it before you answer. Would you trade every season after 1996 to keep the original suits on screen? Yes or no? There's a full deep dive on why Zeo made no sense on the channel. And the whole Zeo cast's afterstory is there too. Off you go. Right, that's the video. If you're new here, the deal on this channel is simple. Everything we say gets checked before it goes out. No invented drama, no cursed episode nonsense, no lying to you for a thumbnail. Just the stuff we actually grew up on, told properly, by someone who was there. We're doing 30 of these in 30 days at the minute, chasing 4,000 subscribers, and every single view counts more than you'd think. So if you've got a correction, or a memory from back then, put it in the comments. We read them. Half the ideas on this channel came from someone in there going, hang on, you missed one. And there's another video waiting on your screen right now. Go on then.